Well, hello there and welcome to another edition of The Big Q. Today we are talking about volunteerism, what volunteerism is all about. How can it affect the society? How is it impactful not only for the continent but also as a global thing that changes the world that we live in today? And that's why today I'm joined by Papa DIOUF, who is the Country Director for VSO Rwanda, and of course is going to be telling us more on this. Thank you very much, sir, for making time to do this, and welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you for having me on your show.
Let's talk about volunteerism. When you talk about volunteerism, is it just me giving my time, say 1 minute, 2 minutes? Is that me volunteering? What is volunteerism all about, really?
Yeah, it's quite a good question. So volunteerism is really having a value for something. That's first. That's quite important, to value something and to be able to sacrifice something from you to be able to meet the needs of others or to apply that value. And that's extremely important. I think people think that because I'm doing this that, you know, I'm volunteering. But you might be volunteering. But it's because you have a certain value. You want to see a certain change in the way you're doing things or things are being done. So you ready to sacrifice part of you to be able to bring about that change that you would want to see.
You really want to see.
Yeah.
Now, the different ways of, is there a different way of volunteering? Because you've also mentioned, of course, it's about you giving your time. But are there models that people actually follow and say, this is the right model of volunteering, this is the wrong way? How does it go?
Yeah, I don't think that there might be the right way for volunteering, but there are different type of volunteering. I mean, let me take my organization. Yes. So VSO is UK-based charity working in 25 countries, and then we are developing an agency using volunteering as a means to achieve our impact or to bring about the change. So the way we're looking at volunteerism, volunteers, so you have about 5 types of volunteers. So one is the international volunteers. These are people coming from abroad and coming to support the cause. Yeah, and that's one type of volunteers. The second type are the national volunteers. These are those who are in the country who are willing to make a change, who are willing to sacrifice themselves to make a change. In the case of Rwanda, it's quite great because you have the homegrown solution in Uganda. People come at the last Saturday of the month. They come together because they want to contribute to transformation of the country.
So that's national volunteerism.
That's national volunteerism. It's an example. So we have what we call the community volunteers, and these are in communities sometimes for some of the work that we're doing. We have people from the community. They are ready to be the linchpin. They are ready to be part of the process of change. And they are from the community themselves. So that's another type of volunteering as well. In our case, we have also what we call the corporate volunteers. So these are people from the private sector and who would want to take time off to be able to come and support a cause. So that's volunteering as well. We have political volunteering. So these are people who work for the parliaments, who work in the government, who are ready to leave part of their life or their work to be able to come and support the cause. So there's a wide range of volunteerism or volunteering, if you find this way.
You know, one would wonder, this is not something that is new, right? It's always been there, has it? Why are we hearing about volunteerism now? Why is it making noise across social media? And where has this word been, or where has this, you know, not innovation, but initiative, where has it been all along?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to use the case of Rwanda. I mean, if you think about Umuganda, I mean, you're Rwandan, you know very well, Umuganda have been there for centuries, yeah? It's not new, it's not a new concept. You know, I mean, the thing is form follows function. I mean, the word itself is not important. I think for me is the act of doing, is, you know, recognizing that you want to make a social change and you are happy to take part of you or to contribute to that in a way that you can. So you might be a journalist, but you might be volunteering for something. I'm sure on Saturday, the last Saturday of the month, you go and do your Umuganda, for example. So I think that's quite important. Let's not be bogged down by the word volunteering. It's more the act that you are ready to do, given the drive that you have. So, and you might ask me the question later, but you may be employed and volunteer. So those who are voluntary are not necessarily those who don't have jobs. I mean, there's no correlation between the two. It's really, once again, you know, believing in something, believing in in a change that you want to see and really contributing to that in a way that you feel is the most relevant based on your circumstances.
Speaking of jobs, of course, and volunteering, you've just mentioned, how do I strike the balance? Say I am working 24 hours, say 15 hours in a day or 10 hours in a day. How do I strike the balance between me giving back, if it is also giving back, as a way of giving back or volunteering my services in one way or another, and as well working to ensure that, it's a balance. How do you balance it out?
Well, it's at individual level. I mean, it's really the drive. I mean, I think for everything you do in life, you have a vision, right? So something is driving whatever you're doing. And that drive is quite important. That drive is critical, is pivotal to decide, I mean, how do I strike that balance? I mean, for me personally, I don't think that there is a tension between the two. As I said earlier, you can't have your job, you can work 24/7, but then the last Saturday of the month, I mean, I'm going and support my community. I'm volunteering. I'm not seeing it necessarily as a tension. So if you think about volunteering, so in our organization we did a study called Voluntary for Development. So what we were trying to see was what is the value addition of volunteering? What is it? So we've identified 8 dimensions of change. So volunteering for development or volunteers add value in terms of improving the quality of services. So when I go and I help to clean a hospital, when I go and help to construct a school, so I'm improving the quality of the service. I'm improving the service. When I go and train teachers to improve the quality of teaching, I'm improving the quality of the service as well. So that's one. The other thing is volunteers, they inspire the community as well, because you have someone coming either from outside, from somewhere else, coming and working with you in order to improve your life, in order to bring about a change. And that's quite inspiring for the people from the community to see someone else coming and doing that, or someone from the community doing that. So that's the inspiration bit. The third dimension is about innovation. So they bring innovation. I told you that in our case, for example, we bring international volunteers, but they come from a different background, different experience, different skills and competencies. And when they come, they bring something from their country. They bring a certain innovation. So you're helping the communities as well to think outside the box, and that's absolutely important. And I can go on. I mean, inclusion. So we try to include people from the most excluded groups, and that's what the volunteers bring. An example that I really want to give is, I mean, when you talk about volunteerism, we're thinking about people who are able, but in our case, we talk about inclusive volunteering, because you have people who have impairment who are volunteering as well. So it's not only not having any impairment to be able to volunteer. We have, for example, a fantastic volunteer. She's deaf. She's deaf. She's a deaf volunteer, and she's helping the deaf community to understand the sign language. She's helping the community health workers and the health workers to understand how they can better interact with the people living with disability, with the deaf people. And I think it's quite important. And then you have social action and participation, collaboration. So all of this. So there are 8 dimensions whereby the volunteer bring a change. They add value in the work we're doing. Yeah.
Of course, my next question is going to be the impact of it. Would you say over the years that you've done this, you have seen a big impact over the years, or is it a growing trend that is, trying to change the society that we live in?
Yeah, I mean, the work I'm doing it because I can bring about a change, because I can make an impact. I can give you figures. I think the figures, I don't think figures are the best. I can give you examples. I can give you examples where volunteers have made a difference. I mean, I was telling you just earlier that we have a deaf volunteer who's helping the deaf community. I mean, a very simple example: as a deaf person, you can't communicate. Yes. You can't. Yeah. And the assumption for many of us is that because you're deaf, you know the sign language. They don't necessarily know the sign language. They don't necessarily know the sign language. So they need to be trained in knowing the sign language, right? So that's on their side. But the people they are communicating or they are willing to communicate to, they don't know the sign language. And we've seen situations where in a health sector where the deaf people would come in a health center, but the health workers, they don't know how to communicate with them, and they give them the complete wrong diagnosis because they don't know what they have. I mean, you come in for a headache, they're treating you for a stomachache. You see, so it's quite critical. But having a volunteer coming and raising awareness, sensitizing people, and training them, you know, coaching them in how they would be able to meet the needs of the people with the deaf people, that's quite critical, and that's a massive impact. I mean, it's invaluable. I can give you all the figures, but if you can help one person to be able to go to the health center and be able to communicate, and that's amazing. So that's some of the changes that we have in the education sector. Also, I mean, you have teachers, and you know, we have many volunteers who are working with the teachers on a daily basis. So what they do, they train, they coach, they mentor the teachers. So we have a program currently funded by DFID across all the country, so every single school in the country. But you have that volunteer who is in the classroom with the teacher, observing the teacher, and mentoring, coaching, accompanying the teacher. But that can only improve the learning outcomes of the children. So these are a couple of examples. But again, I mean, using Umuganda again, I'm sure you've seen in many of the communities where, you know, we've been able to construct schools, we've been able to construct health centers, etc. So it does make the difference. And you know, even the United Nations, when they were ratifying the Sustainable Development Goals, I mean, it was clearly mentioned that, you know, we will only be able to make it through volunteering, and that's quite important. If we can really incite, if we can motivate, galvanize the youth, especially, to do more of this volunteering, that would be, we will definitely reach a continental transformation.
Are there guidelines, you know, that one needs to go by, you know, like rules that one has to go by, something that guides them along? Or once you get the volunteers and, you know, put them in a particular district to work, you just follow them up without necessarily taking them through the guidelines and rules?
Yeah, so there's an accompaniment. So we understand that when you come and volunteer for our organization, again, as I said earlier, you need to understand the values of the organization, because we have values, right? You need to buy into those values as well, which is quite critical. So that's something that we do. There's an orientation. There's an orientation that we're doing for the volunteers, whether they are national or international. It doesn't matter. They have that orientation at the beginning. So for the international volunteers, those coming from abroad, so what happened is we introduce them to the Rwandan culture, because they need to understand. So I'm coming from another country. I'm coming from Senegal. The culture might be different, and I'm sure they are a bit different. So we try to make sure that we orient them or induct them on the culture of the country. That's quite critical. So they know at least that. So that's the kind of framework. And then they understand the work that they have to do. And then we work with them towards supporting the communities, you know, supporting them in the right way. And then you have that accompaniment throughout the volunteering placement. Yeah.
Well, we do take a short break with that, but when we come back, of course, we keep talking about innovative, you know, volunteerism. What does it even mean for the continent, and how does it impact the development and growth of the continent? So do keep it the big Q. So welcome back to the big Q, and of course we're still talking to Papa DIOUF, and he's telling us more on volunteerism and what it actually means. When we went for a short break, I mentioned on an earlier session that we had during, of course, the Youth Connect, innovative volunteerism. What is that all about? Do I have to be an innovator to be a volunteer? How does that work, and how does it impact the whole society and the continent in general?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's more around finding innovative way to encourage youth to volunteer. So if I, again, take the example of Rwanda and VSO in Rwanda. So we currently have about 230 volunteers, out of which 200 are Rwandans. So they are young Rwandan who are graduate. They graduated. And as you know, I mean, like any country in Africa, the unemployment rate is still high. So what we're trying to do as well is, while they are looking for jobs, we're trying to encourage them to volunteer as well, you know, so that volunteering for the value of volunteering for contributing to the transformation of their country in a way or another. But at the same time, it's a, I don't want to say that it's a transition in getting a job, but it's, the reality is that, it's a training center, because as you know, when you are graduated, it's very difficult to find a job. So when you go to the job market, they will ask you whether you have experience. Well, I don't have experience. Then you can have a job because you need experience. So it's a catch-22. So what we're trying to do now is, well, while we have this pool of young, very motivated and bright Rwandan who can aspire to be leaders in the future, we give them that opportunity to use volunteering as a way to contribute to the society, to the community, but as a way as well to skill up. To skill up. And that's a kind of innovation, because when they do that, they learn. They learn a lot about the values of being Rwandan, the values of supporting the community. They are very galvanized, contributing to the transformation. They get more skills as well. They get more experience, which means that they get more ready for the job market when they go after that.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of innovation that we look into. And it's clear. I mean, if we want to achieve the continental transformation, given the youth that we have, given the lack of job we have, I mean, this is the right thing to do, really. I mean, there's different way of volunteering. As I said earlier, the impact can be invaluable, and you can really bring about a change. So that's really what we're trying to encourage youth to do now.
But speaking of job opportunities, we have, there's always a myth and there's always a fact. Lots of people tend to say, if you don't have a job opportunity, especially if you come from a poor background, you'd rather volunteer, because it's one way of educating yourself, it's one way of getting money, and the rich would rather keep working. How true is that?
Well, how true is it? I'm not going to tell you it's true. I mean, I've been in Youth Connect over the past 3 days, and there've been some fantastic example of youth, not from a rich background, from poor background, who have been able to make it. They made it. I mean, for me, it's important, but that's not the most important. So I think in the Bible they say where you come from doesn't matter. What matters is what you've become. And that's very important. Yes, I mean, we know that in many other countries in Africa where we are, there are nepotism, they're fine. But I think that, your background in relation to volunteering doesn't really matter. I think it's really what you have inside you, the value that you have, the drive that you have, the change that you really want to see, that should drive the choice that you make. And that's very important. So, I mean, that's what I believed in.
Africa's development, of course, and its challenges. Do you believe, of course, through volunteerism, this will really help the development and challenges that we as Africans are facing today? Of course, we know of the upsurge of the youth that prefer, to go abroad for greener pastures. We've seen lots of them die along the way. Do you believe if this, this part of the youth or this quarter of the youth, if they use their energy to give back, it is a way of developing Africa and also keeping them, as well in the continent?
I don't believe. I strongly believe. I strongly believe that it's a way to help us move forwards. We are moving. I think we are moving. Probably. I think for us, most African, we don't always see that because we want to move so fast. We are so impatient. I mean, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So I think we're moving. But yes, I agree with you. I mean, if we give a conducive environment to youth, if we encourage youth to volunteer, I can tell you that we will make a difference. We will make a difference. If you take just East Africa, for example, how many youth do we have? We have half of the youth population in Africa, so about 350 million. But if we can harness, that potential, if we can really make the most out of that potential, we can do wonders. We can do wonders, especially using volunteering as a way to get to that transformation. Yes, I strongly believe that volunteering is a way to be able to achieve the continental transformation.
But how do we grow this culture? How do you convince, say me myself, to go out and actually volunteer my time, my education, whatever I have, the little that I have, back to the society? How do you grow this culture? Because it hasn't, in other parts of the world probably, Yeah, but in Africa, it is yet to stem its roots and being, be felt actually in the continent.
Yeah.
So how do we grow this culture?
Yeah. I mean, as I kept on saying, volunteering is about values. It's about values. It's really helping someone to understand your value, your inner value. And I think that's really important. It's not a paid job. It's not, I think most people, they think that because I'm volunteering, I'm doing a job. No, you're doing something to help bring about a change, a social change. That's what you're doing. So for me, I think it's this kind of discussion that we're having. I mean, Youth Connect I think it's a great opportunity to motivate, to talk about volunteering. What does it actually mean? What is the potential of volunteering? I think that's quite important. The political framework, or the institutional framework, is quite important as well. Having a conducive environment where we are promoting, we are encouraging youth to volunteer. I think that's quite critical. Let me get again the example of Rwanda with Umuganda. I mean, it's anchored in the culture, in the Rwandan culture. But how did it happen? I mean, people, they know that, the last Saturday is Umuganda. I mean, I need to go and do something for my community. I need to be involved because this is my country. I need to do something. It's about active citizenship, and that's quite important. So we need to look at volunteering as active citizenship. So I'm doing it as a patriot. I'm doing it as someone from the country. I'm really concerned. I really want to contribute to the development, transformation of my community, my house, my city, my district, my country. I think that's the kind of message we should be having. And I think youth are more and more receptive to that, but we shouldn't just let down and just let kids focusing on the money I'm getting. Money is great, but money is not the end. Money is not the end. And I think that's the reason why we see what we see in the Mediterranean Sea, and all these youth going and trying to cross and go somewhere. But we can really harness those values, and I think that's quite important because that's what makes us African. Our value makes us African. Our tradition makes us African. Our culture makes us African. How can we really draw on or build on that?
So sensitization basically is very important.
It's a lot of sensitization and demonstration that it works. Showing. We had. And it was great. This is the first time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the African Union has had the African Union Youth Volunteer Corps. 80. I think there were about 80 plus. Coming from the continent, youth, really getting them into the volunteering spirit. And we did actually, we had a session as VSO where we used some of our volunteers to come and really share their experience. And I think that's very profound. It's very profound and impactful to have young volunteers who aspire to become volunteers contribute to the continental transformation, having others more experienced volunteers to share their experience. I think we should do it more often. I think it does really help.
When you talk, you kept on saying the youth, of course, which is very important. But I want to look at this age bracket that is not part of the youth, which I believe they also play a role in giving back to the society. Why are you not giving them the opportunity, or is there an opportunity, say, for the elderly to also volunteer and give back in their own ways through all these programs that you have?
Yeah, this is a great question, Fiona. It's true that we talk about youth, but to me, or for me, youth is here. It's a mindset. It's a mindset. We might have old people like me. We may have old people who have a youth mindset, and they can still support. They can still volunteer. They can still contribute. So I think we shouldn't. Yes, we need the youth to be able to be at the center of the transformation of our continent. It is very critical because they've been left behind. They've been taken or considered as recipient. So we know what you want. Let's give you. Now we need to turn it around. I mean, they are the one who should be at the center and telling us and telling everyone what they want, because they are the future. But then we have the older generation as well. Let's not ostracize them by saying, well, they are here also to contribute. There is a lot that they can bring in. So in our program, we do have actually elders in. We do have that in our program. we have another program in other countries, like in Uganda, for example, we are working with retired people. Yeah, we're working with retired people because they have a lot of experience. They have a lot to bring in. Absolutely. And if you pair them up with the youth, with a young volunteer, there's so much cross-fertilization because you have, you know, it's how do you call it again? It's two generations coming together, and they can cross-fertilize, and that can really fast-track the transformation. So yes, it's important, and yes, we take them into consideration in our program.
Now let's talk about the stipend. You know, everything people want to talk about, there has to be something, an incentive somewhere that pushes the youth. I do understand that in part of volunteering there is a stipend, or there is, I wouldn't call it a salary, like you say, it's not a salary, but it's a stipend that is given to. How do you determine this? How do you say you will get this, you'll get this, since it's not even a salary? Is it a uniform thing? Is it a given that if I volunteer, I'm entitled to something at the end of the day? How does that work?
Thank you. Let me rewind and correct you a little bit. So it's not an incentive. And again, the only incentive that we give is the value. Is the value. That's the incentive. So we are not saying if you do this, we're giving you this, because that becomes a paid job. What we're saying is you need to have the core values. You need to have the drive to make a change, to make a social change. So that's the incentive that we bring in. But in terms of, you know, more practical term, what we're doing is not stipend, but it's a living allowance, because we realize that, you know, while they're doing the work, yes, it's volunteering, but it's not free necessarily. It can't be free. So we give you a living allowance because they're leaving something to do something else, right? So they have a living allowance that we're providing to the volunteers on a monthly basis to help them cover the basic expenses. I mean, some of the expenses they might have back home as well. Who knows? So that's what we offering them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So even as we sum up right now, tips. A young person, an elderly person feels, yeah, I want to volunteer. You know, where do I start from? Where do you start from? Where do I get this information from? Who do I talk to? And, you know, what are some of the programs that can I fit in? What programs can I fit in and find myself comfortable in and give back to the society in my own way as volunteering? Yeah.
So in our case, so what I can advise, the tip, I mean, it's not a tip, but you can get in touch with VSO. So we have our website, VSO, www.vsointernational.org. You can go in there, you can have all the information, or you can come to our office in Chimirula. You won't miss it. And then we can give you all kind of information. I mean, what we're trying to do now, and really in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth as well, is to grow the national volunteering program, especially. So what we've been doing, probably to sum up, so we've been growing national volunteering. We've been trying to pair them up with the international volunteers, because international volunteers, they come with the skills, the expertise, but they don't know the country. So if you pair them up, it's a win-win, because the national volunteers can be a facilitator to the international volunteers, but they can learn so much from international volunteers as well. So we're trying to do that. So we are trying to growing the national volunteering program. So if you're really interested in volunteering, please come and see us. We'll be more than delighted to give you all the information and to see how we could work together towards transforming the country, or contribute to transforming Rwanda. Yeah,
Thank you very much for making time to meet us. Well, I've been talking to Papa DIOUF. Of course, he is the Country Director for VSO Rwanda, and he has mentioned something that is key. He says volunteerism is not just about the young ones, but even the old. If you have time, make time, give back to the society. Let's all grow, let's all develop the continent for the better future of your children, our children, and our grandchildren. Of course, do keep it the big Q and keep sending in suggestions on who you want to see on the show, and let's keep the conversation going on. As usual, my name is Fiona Mbabazi. Do keep it Rwanda Television.